Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me. Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, good morning. Rob Browne here with you. I got a great show in line for you today. Going to be joined in a moment by Jimmy Ott, the Ott Father, ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge. There's a lot to talk about. Things are happening fast in the sports world. And I'll tell you, the Sweet 16, Michigan State has been blessed to have a guy like Tom Izzo. Yesterday we were talking on the show with Matt Dean and had a great basketball discussion about, teams in the tournament. Doug Dean, Matt Dean, 15 Sweet 16s for Michigan State. They hadn't won a national championship since 2000, but Tom Izzo coaches those kids. They're tough as nails. It's a lot of fun to watch them play. And you just look, game in, game out. They're going to give you a full 40. Eric Musselman, he gets that out of his kids at Arkansas. Bruce Pearl got as much as he could out of this Auburn team this past season. But it ended up free throws killed them. You shoot 50%, 19 of 37 against Houston. You're not going to beat anybody. But got a great show, so we're going to get started right now. We got Jimmy Ott on with us right now, and follow us on Twitter. Remember, @sidelines_live. And let me say something about Eleanor Maynard, Hobson Realty, top 5% out of 4,600 realtors in Memphis. And she is a third-generation Hobson realtor. Do yourself a favor. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in Memphis, or you're relocating to Memphis, any real estate need in Memphis, go to the website on sidelines.live on our website. You'll see the Hobson Realty hyperlink. Click on it. It's got all of Eleanor Maynard's information. She is Sidelines Realtor. And so lot to do. There's always a lot to do. We got 2 hours of fun ahead of us. And Jimmy Ott, what's your takeaway so far from what you've seen in the NCAA tournament? I know you do the horses. Y'all do all kinds of numbers, and you're great at it. But were you surprised by how many of the teams that have played together 4 or 5 years have really done well, like Princeton, Florida Atlantic?
What you would think, Rob, first of all, just, man, recovering from 4 days doing shows down at the Beau Rivage, man. We were we had a good time down at Beau Rivage, our buddy Carl Johnson. And let me just say this: it was not a great first 4 days of the tournament for the betting public, including Saturday. Was one of the biggest days in the history of a few sports books. I'm not saying the Beau Rivage, but one in Las Vegas, including the Super Bowl. It started with a public dog and Furman getting beat. Then the standalone, the biggest play of the day was Duke. And we all know what happened. We all know what happened there. So it's the Princeton game reminds me that if you didn't have, Arizona has the best big man combination in all of college basketball, in Tubelis and Ballo. 6'11", highly skilled guy and a very physical 7-footer. And Princeton went toe-to-toe with them on the boards. They ended up, I think it was 35 apiece, but they ended up with the same amount of rebounds. That's unheard of, and for little old Princeton. But if you look at Princeton, then against Missouri, Rob, they out-rebounded them by like 16 second chance points. They outscored them by like 17, 18. If you didn't know, if you just had skins and shirts out there, you wouldn't know who was the 15 seed and who was the who was the 2 seed, or the non 10 seed out there. It was 7 seed. It was really, really that's where we are. Say 1985, the the first that's when we went from 48 to 64. Okay, and it took, oh gosh, what, till about 4 years ago, where the 2018, 2018. So it took, you know, 33 years, 34 tournaments to get the first 116 matched up. Then it took just 5 years for the second one. That tells you where college basketball is. That's not a bad thing. The other thing, when we got these, the brackets come out, well, then we wait for the point spreads to come out. And 15, 20 years ago, these point spreads for 116s, they're all 30, 32, 30. I'm going to go back to the days when Rex Chapman and Kentucky was the number one seed. They were the 30-point favorites against a mid-major. These lines are all like 19 to 22. So it wasn't surprising that we had such a competitive, it becomes almost cliche when the bracket's going, this thing's wide open. Well, it is. It is. And so, and I think it's a good thing. College football, for some reason, I'm reaching for a reason why I did, but had a very competitive, sort of a competitive balance season out of nowhere this past year. Not only did TCU get into the tournament, but TCU did what Michigan couldn't do, what Notre Dame couldn't do, and some others couldn't do, and that's be competitive and actually win a game against the big boys in the tournament. So, no, I'm not surprised by this at all. Alabama and Houston are now the favorites to win it. I thought Houston, and both of them coming out of Birmingham, was interesting because, poor Iowa, because when the tickets were split between the Auburn and Alabama session, it was all Auburn in their two games, and it was all Alabama in the other two. Well, then it was about 50-50 when it came to the Saturday session, because those Alabama people were pulling for Houston, and the Auburn people were pulling for Maryland later on. So it kind of washed each other out. But it's a poor job by the NCAA. Not the first, won't be the last, where you have a sport where all you're playing for is seeding for the biggest, the most important stretch of the season. And they can't even put a one seed not in the backyard of an 8 or 9 seed. Is that's just, they've done this before. They did it to Mississippi State one year when they were the higher seed, sent them to Dallas to play Texas, which was a lower seed than them. So they've done it before, but I thought that was a poor job. And when Houston cranks up that defensive pressure, man, I mean, Auburn looked so good in the first half, but then 4 of 24 in the second half. And it even affected them at the line where they were just 12 of 25. So that's Kelvin Sampson, he's at the same type of team that's gotten to the Final Four and gotten to the regional final the last 2 years. They've won 7 games, now 9 games in the last 3 tournaments. They're certainly tournament seasoned.
Yeah, they are. And Auburn was 19 of 36 from the free throw line for the game. And you're not going to beat many teams doing that. It's going to be very difficult to do it. And I think the strategy, everybody calls it, is, hack, just foul the hell out of Auburn because you don't think they can do it at the free throw line. And it was a great strategy from Kelvin Sampson. It's no different than in football. If you don't think a quarterback's got the arm to beat you, you put 9 guys up near the line of scrimmage and drop 2 back until they prove that they can. And that's Kelvin Sampson's a pretty damn smart coach. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm take off the fact that I'm an Auburn graduate. I don't think I'd like it too much if Auburn was a 1 seed and we had to go to Dallas and play Baylor or Texas. That wouldn't be a lot of fun either. But did they do it, Jimmy, just so they could have a lot of tickets? I mean, it does look a lot better on TV to have a full house versus some of these early games. There's hardly anybody there.
It depends on where it is, Rob. We go to Omaha whenever LSU goes to the College World Series. I even have, my reservations already for flight and hotel just in case they do make it, because it's, I've done it so many times. It's just much easier to cancel those reservations than it is to try and find some when they finally qualify. Omaha is one of the reasons College World Series is never leaving Omaha is because they're a great host. They're also a great host for the first two rounds of the NCAA basketball tournament. They sell out every year the day it is announced. Not when the teams are announced, when they announce that they are going to host. They sell out. They sell out in other places like Salt Lake City, like Albuquerque. They hardly put anybody into place when they don't have a rooting interest in a place like New Orleans. I've been to it. It was funny. Creighton played down there, and the guy says, "Where is everybody?" It's like, man, they don't really come. They don't really support college basketball unless LSU's in it. So, man, that's you generate too damn much money to worry about ticket sales. You worry about that when you award the host sites, and stick to the places like Omaha, Albany, Salt Lake City, Albuquerque, and some others. There are Dayton. Rob, that first four is never leaving Dayton because they sell it out. The first four, 216s are playing. Place is sold out. 211s and 216s sold out every year. So there are places in the Midwest as well. Indianapolis is basketball country. Kentucky is basketball country. Some of those places. Greenville, Greensboro, North Carolina, always.
Oh,
sells
yeah.
out. So,
Yeah. You're right about that. But you better thank God LSU and Mississippi State and Ole Miss fans do what they do to go up to Omaha. And it's just, and that's why so many teams from the SEC get these bids and the regionals, the super regionals and all. And that's a great point. Jimmy, the brackets for a lot of people look like they're just a splattered mess. And my theory is, and when I'm picking stocks and putting portfolios together for clients, there's a lot of things, back testing, due diligence, you can call it whatever you want. But you look at the teams that have got a lot of guys that are older, 4th and 5th year players. Some of them came in via the portal, but guys that have played together a long time. The classic cases, look at Arkansas, how they've been able to get to this point with 4 freshmen, one of them, Nick Smith, who didn't come on till late. Then you look at the collection of talent Kentucky has, and this is probably one of the older teams Cal's had at Kentucky, and they can't do it. And he's offering every excuse in the world, which sounds like he's leaving. I don't know if he is or not. And look what Eric Musselman's doing. 3 straight Sweet 16s. If they win, they get to the Elite 8. That's 3 Elite 8s in a row. I think Eric Musselman is underpaid compared to the guys up above him, especially what he's done now for the 3rd straight year.
Musselman is, he's got the right approach for the tournament. I think Bruce Pearl does as well. It's no crime not for his team, not to get past Houston, and that was the case in the first round matchup between Auburn and Iowa. Bruce Pearl had been to the tournament 12 times. Coach Fran from Iowa had been to the tournament 12 times. Bruce Pearl's been to 5 Sweet 16s. Fran's been to 0. I mean, some teams, Tom Izzo, his teams are built to perform in March. Now, this is even after one and done in the conference tournament against Ohio State, who didn't have their best player in Sensabaugh, and still lost to them, but they got it done in the in are back into Sweet 16. I think it's got to do with the coaching, and I don't think college basketball is all about the coach. It's all about the coach. Rick Pitino is going to win immediately at St. John's. You can put it down. It's what is happening in Alabama is all about Nate Oates. Now, I kind of find it funny between a little war of quotes between him and Nick Saban right now. Nick Saban responded to
I saw that,
saying there's no such thing as wrong place, wrong time. So I mean, I had to chuckle about that. And look, Nate Oates this won't be the first or last coach who's an excellent coach, who's detail oriented, who is able to compile a good roster, who really, some of the outside things doesn't handle so well. And he's kind of been the poster child just a couple of months for that. But it's college basketball. It's all about Bruce. Ole Miss just hired a great one, man. I mean, look, I don't know what happened. All the charges were dropped and things like that, but I do know how he does on the basketball court. He's going to win at Ole Miss at a place that has no tradition at all. How long they can keep him, different story. We will see. Rick Barnes took Clemson to the Sweet 16, went to the tournament with Providence. He went to the Final Four with Texas. He's back in the Sweet 16 with Tennessee. That's he's never won one, but damn, I mean, they're going to be a consistent, they're going to be playing relevant games in March. And that's why I was a little upset when they were ready to let go of Will Wade. Another guy, Sean Miller. Speaking of Will Wade, Sean Miller back where he coached before, and Xavier's back in the Sweet 16 again. It's Nick Cronin at UCLA. UCLA was really trying to find themselves. And one of the big things about UCLA is that their athletic department was just so much in debt. And, the UCLA Bruins are flying commercial before Nick Cronin got there. So he's got them, and listen, they would be one of the favorites to win this whole thing if they didn't have so many injuries, but they're still alive and they're still advancing. So the coaches, it's all about the coach in college basketball.
Yeah, it is. And he sets the tempo. If you do things right, it's great. If not, it's a disaster. But I think the thing with Nick Saban saying, there's no such place as the wrong place, wrong time. It's like, you're running with the wrong crowd, with the bad crowd. Well, if you're running with them, you are the bad crowd. That's what my parents have always told me. And still, I tell my kids that. I don't want to hear the excuses. But I thought that was interesting. I don't know what this guy did, but there's so much that we don't know on that Brandon Miller thing. And, once the tournament's over, I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff coming out. I think a lot of the national media are circling around like hyenas, on a crippled wildebeest calf that can't walk right after birth. They want something. I don't know what they're going to get, but they're coming. But let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. We've got the Ott father, Jimmy Ott, ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge on Sidelines right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Jimmy, there's a lot going on right now. Obviously, we know about the final, Sweet 16. And you talk about Mick Cronin, who's out at UCLA. Look how quickly he turned that program into, success. And then flip it back to when Ben Howland came to Mississippi State with his 3 Final Fours. He never was able to get any momentum there. And then you look at what's another team that has 11 or 12 guys on the roster. It's Kansas State. And then you look at LSU has 11 or 12 new guys on the team. And it didn't work out well. But Kansas State's a team that's matched up against Michigan State. What do you see on that one that you really like?
Man, Kansas State, Tang at Kansas State, they were picked to finish last. by the media in the Big 12. Big 12 was by far the best conference in college basketball this year. But it's a guy, you got a point guard, and he really kept them together when Kentucky played. They were kind of hitting their stride and starting to score a lot. Sheboy was just a handful. Either he was, fouling guys, getting to the line, or creating, getting putbacks and second chance points, for the Wildcats. And they were threatening, they would go up 4, and Noel would, he would take things into his own hands and, pop a 3, to keep it close. And here's a kid that played 3 years at Arkansas State, man. And sometimes, a guy that it's not 6 feet, he's not going to get offered by a ton of people, and he's got to earn his way. And the only way he went from the Sun Belt to the best conference in college basketball was a new coach, and he had an empty slate as a roster. But one thing I think you can tell about Tang is I think he helped Scott Drew compile that roster in Waco, because, man, to put that roster together was unbelievable. What's funny about that, Rob, you mentioned that game. LSU played Kansas State in November, and LSU tied the game with a running layup to send it into overtime. And they said the clock malfunctioned, it didn't start on time, and disallowed the bucket. My point is, at the end of the season, wait a minute, Kansas State is winning games. Kansas State's a 3 seed. LSU has won 3 games in the SEC.
Yeah,
and that's what scares me about LSU's new coach is you want to see improvement over the course of the season in the first year. I think we saw that in Brian Kelly's team at LSU. And so you saw that in Tang's team at Kansas State. We didn't see that at McMahon's. They got worse, period. Now, listen, it's college basketball. It's a completely different – most teams are completely different November, December to February and March, okay? But LSU got passed up. I mean, would you ever have dreamed that they were about to go to overtime with that team that's going to the Sweet 16? I mean, they're not even – they're not on the same planet as that team. I said this before when they were trying to decide and they were trying to restructure Will Wade's contract and things like that. Will Wade's coaching again. He'll have to endure a 5-game suspension at Lake Charles and McNeese State. I don't know how he'll get through it like Bill Self did with his 3 games. But anyway, the LSU, you don't have built-in resources advantages at LSU basketball. It's not there. You got it in LSU football. You got it in LSU baseball. LSU's baseball is the number 1 resource program in all of college baseball. It should be. They got tradition. They got support. They got the number 1 NIL budget. They got the number 1 coaching budget. They got them in Starkville between leading in attendance every year. It matters way more in Baton Rouge than most places in the country, and whether or not they win college baseball games. So it's not the same. Now you got a lady named Kim Mulkey on campus. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Rob, when's the last time LSU basketball was a distant 3rd in attendance in their own building? They're selling out without promotions. They used to have to do it with, giving away a car or something like that to sell out, to pack the PMAC promotion, okay? She's selling them out on a regular basis for, the better opponents than the PMAC. The gymnastics team sells out the PMAC. And you can't get about 1,500, 2,000 for the men's basketball team. Man, LSU is when you got a guy that is playing relevant games in March, you don't get rid of him, and they did. So that's the new president, and he's been way more active than past presidents, and that's a problem. LSU is. I don't know about this guy McMahon, and I think he's well thought of in the basketball community. He won a lot of games at Murray State. He was able to recruit and able to coach, but I think so far he's a little in over his head at LSU.
Yeah, and you're right. You just have to get the right people in there, and LSU will support basketball. I mean, they'll support a winner.
Rob, they won't support basketball. Yeah. They'll support a winning basketball team.
Yeah. So
they won't support basketball. I've seen it. I've lived it.
Yeah. 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 And it's the same thing at Auburn. I mean, it's in Georgia and Alabama.
You think they got a few more people going to games since Bruce Pearl's there? Huh?
Yeah, they do. But it's, you got to get the right person in there. You're right. And otherwise it's a nightmare. But I think with LSU, yeah. I mean, look at those early games this season, Alabama. There was nobody at the Coleman Airport hangar, Coleman Coliseum. But now, look at them. They're on top of the world, and they're in a great bracket. But don't sleep on San Diego State. That's a good-looking team. They're in the Mountain West, so we don't hear that much about them. We don't watch their games, but Alabama's going to have a tougher game than anybody is going to admit against them. And that coach, I like the confidence of San Diego State's coach. I mean, he is supremely confident.
Well, it's the same style that Steve Fisher started, the former coach for the Fab Five in Michigan, who won a national title with Glenn Rice. They have a certain style of play that they're very, very physical. They defend and rebound a lot like Tom Izzo's teams back in the day, but they will struggle to score at times. And that's where I think Alabama has got length. They can defend, but Alabama can go on these streaks that San Diego State cannot. And Alabama has a real comfortable path to not only the Final Four, but to the championship game. I mean, you're talking about playing a 5, 6, and 7 seeds, at best, to advance to the so it's not like the West where you got a 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, it's or a 2, 3, 4, 6. They don't have that in Alabama's region. So Kansas was the tough one. That's where UCLA, Gonzaga, and they're out there in Las Vegas. That's the toughest regional. But Alabama, it's San Diego State. They're no stranger to the Sweet 16. They're no stranger to college basketball. They have performed so much better than their conference. The conference has been horrible. They have not been horrible in the NCAA tournament. They're not going to back down. They're not going to be fazed by the stage. But Alabama's got way too much firepower for San Diego State.
Yeah, and they're physical, but they do, like Dave Cody just texted me, they look like a football team. And but again, night in, night out, it matters who you play. But then again, the Memphis fans up here just crushed Friday night. But man, how do you not defend that play at the end? Don't you learn that, Jimmy, when your kids in first and second grade basketball, how to defend the play under the basket at the end of the game? And same thing with Kansas. Why did the guy bank the free throw in? Why didn't he just do like you do playing backyard basketball, throw it against the backboard, get the rebound? Maybe if Bill Self was there, that would have happened.
Well, you got to hit the rim.
Crazy.
You got to hit the rim. If you don't hit the rim, it's a violation. So he was trying to throw a line drive and bank it off of there. But look, they did miss Bill Self. Absolutely. The thing about Arkansas is they became so reliant on Nick Smith Jr. since his return, but they pulled him out in this one. Yeah. His minutes were half of what they've been the previous 8 games. His shots were 25% of what they've been averaging. He's been averaging 24 shots a game. I mean, he averaged 6. I mean, I'm sorry. He averaged 16 shots a game. He only attempted 4 on Saturday. So they pulled him back. Now they're going to need him at some point to advance deeper in the tournament. But on Saturday, they went away from him and went to the local guy in the Arkansas kid in Davis.
Yeah, out of Jacksonville, Arkansas, near the Air Force Base at Little Rock, man. But Jimmy, I'm wondering, you're from Baton Rouge, LSU. Was that rule about the ball has to hit the rim? It can't is that because of Shaq's free throw shooting?
I don't know, man. Big boy.
By the way,
that was still when the media was on courtside, and that dude was something to watch from courtside. I can tell you that.
He's one of my favorite players. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I know, Jimmy, you got to go to think of it. This is Tommy Kane. He walked on played basketball at North Carolina State at the end of Jim Valvano with Les Robinson,
Okay.
and, ACC Network and Fox Sports over in Atlanta, and it covers ACC and college basketball for us. But Jimmy, I tell you what, I love it when you're on here. People in New Orleans, if you ask them a question, does the dress make me look fat? You betcha. They'll tell you, have a drink with you, and you're having a great time. I love people when you're on here, just like when Tommy's on here, y'all are not afraid to tell it like it is. And I have one other question before you go. Jimmy, was Matt McMahon the coach of John Morant at Murray State?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
but I thought, yeah.
He recruited him. He gets credit for him. No, there's no question. I mean, and so no. I mean, McMahon's resume is fine. I've seen resume hires come through Baton Rouge, and they can't get it done. LSU does not support basketball. It supports winning basketball. And I mean, and I don't know if Tommy, he's just getting on this. I was saying they're getting outdrawn by gymnastics and women's basketball like 6-1.
Wow.
And I've never seen that at the Maravich Assembly Center. Kim Mulkey, and you know what? When you overlap the season by the football team, you overlap by the baseball team. Now you're in the same season as the women's basketball team, because Mulkey's not going anywhere. She's going to get better and better and better. You can book that. Yeah. But I mean, that makes it that much harder for your program to get the sport. They got to win at LSU basketball. And like I said, to have basically going to overtime with Kansas State in November and see where those two teams finish, there's no comparison. And it just didn't get any better over the course of the season in year one for McMahon.
Yeah. Tommy,
Tommy, see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Jim.
Hey, listen, Jimmy, tell people how they can follow you, keep up with you, because I know you're doing tons of great work with the betting odds, the horses, and everything.
All right. Sports Better's Paradise, wherever you find your podcasts, on the Bet Rivers Network, and also 1045ESPN.com in Baton Rouge, at Jimmy Ott 1045. Thank you, Rob. See you, Tommy.
Hey, you bet. Thank you so much. Hey, tell you what, Jimmy is he is a lot of fun having on here, man. He goes out to what is it? Go out there to California, to Carmel, to the horse track. He'll go to Vegas, go to the casinos down on. He was at Beau Rivage for 4 days over the weekend, and Tommy, like a lot of people, his brackets looked like the ER after a 20-car pileup on the interstate. It was crazy watching all this stuff happen. But actually, in one of my, I did 2 brackets. In one of them, I picked Princeton to beat Arizona. But in one of them, I had A&M going to the Final Four. That's how much of a diametrically opposing bracket sheet I have, a complete 180. And my wife, Audrey, had A&M winning the whole thing. So help me, please.
Oh, there's no help. I mean, it's just that's what makes this great. I think that we talked about this before, but the greatest sporting event in the world every year. I mean, the Super Bowl is amazing. College football playoffs are amazing, but this is it's just awesome. I mean, watching these underdogs come out and play hard, and I mean, the story about Farley Dickinson not even being like tournament eligible. They just got put in out of a technicality. They got into the dance out of a technicality issue. I mean, it's just all that stuff is just great stories. And
which team?
Fairleigh Dickinson. So Fairleigh Dickinson's in I forget which conference they're in, but they're in the worst conference in the country. And they didn't even win their they didn't win their tournament. They got in because the team that won the tournament, if I got this correct, the team that won the tournament was a first-year Division I team, so they're not eligible for postseason play. So Fairleigh Dickinson got in on that technicality. They got into the dance as a 16 seed, as the quote-unquote winner of their conference. So they weren't even supposed to be in the dance. Crazy.
That is that's cool. I love it though. And this year, aren't you seeing a lot? Did you notice how many teams you've got out there of older players that have been together a long time? And then on the other end of the spectrum, Arkansas with those 4 freshmen. Nick Smith didn't come on till the end of the season, and they were like 2-5 in those last 7 games when he played early. Then he was out, then he came back. But that's the brilliance of Eric Musselman, to get all those guys to put aside their personal stats and play for the team. I mean,
yeah, Musselman used to be a coach here for the Atlanta Hawks for a while. He was an assistant coach here at the Hawks. And had an opportunity to spend a day with him, mic'd him up for practice, and then did a story on him one year. And that guy's just passionate through and through. I mean, you saw him when he ripped his shirt off and started swinging it around. I was like, oh my gosh, it was a little too much, but thank goodness he's in decent shape for his age. But he's just a passionate basketball junkie. Like, his office was full. He had a bookshelf that was as high as the ceiling, and it was just full of books about basketball and coaches. And he reads all the time, and he's a student of the game, and he always will be. And he can coach, man, and he's got those guys playing great. I mean, that was a heck of a win for them. And it's fun to see him out there doing his thing, because I really respect him as a coach and as a human being. And the couple of days I got to spend with him, he made an impact for sure on me. But yeah, this tournament is exactly what it is. And I think I saw a stat, and Rob, you might have seen this, but the ESPN on their website now has a perfect bracket chat following. You can they break down all the math on the perfect brackets. And after the first day, the first half of the first day, so half the teams play, right? The brackets went from
Tommy, hold that thought, because we're going into a break. This is really cool, because, and I'm with you about Musselman. He's a junkie, but God, wouldn't you love to have him as your coach?
Oh my gosh,
and play for him. Yeah. Hey, we're going to be right back. Tommy, Kane, get ready, get pen and paper handy right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Tommy, you were making an incredible point before the break, so I want people to hear this. Get pen and paper handy. Write this down.
Yeah, I was telling you, I was looking at the ESPN website, and after the first day of play, so it's only half the teams have played, right? Because the other half plays the second day. ESPN has a little over 20 million brackets in their site. It's 20 million right across the country. There was perfect brackets after the first day. There was 653 brackets left that were still perfect. That is, if you do the math, that's 0.00003% of the people out of 20 million had everything right after just one day. That's what I mean. It's just, I think the stats are like it's 1 in 9 quadrillion. I don't even know if you can get a perfect bracket. I mean, it's just, and that's what makes it so amazing. It's so much fun. I mean, like, do you think, whoever the heck picked, Fairleigh Dickinson, I'm sure it was just the Fairleigh Dickinson fans that picked them to win a couple games. But yeah, the brackets are great. I've actually got I have 2 little girls, and one's 8 and one's 6, and I've got them all tied up in brackets, and we have a big board in our house. We write the brackets in. And my little daughter, my oldest daughter, picked Kansas to win the whole thing. And when Kansas lost the other night, she literally cried on the couch for like 20 minutes. I had to console her. My wife was like, maybe we shouldn't do so much of these brackets. I was like, no. It's all part of life. It's part of learning, Yeah.
Right.
So
absolutely. And I mean, and you think watching, it makes people, it's like fantasy football or baseball, basketball, whatever the fantasy league you're in, you then have a vested interest.
Totally.
You want to teach kids about the stock market. Don't get them to pick a portfolio of stocks. put them, even if they're in first or second grade or fifth grade, put at least $1 for everyone they buy. I don't care if it's just $1. When you've got your money in there, you will follow it. And that's what makes the bracket. You're right about it. So much fun, and just the opportunities, and even, Auburn, hey, go practice free throws. That's what they should be doing right now. But just you got to give.
That was a tough situation. That kid, I mean, Nick, you got to miss it. But missing a free throw, much like Jimmy was just talking about, is not as easy as it sounds. Like, it really isn't. I mean, because you have to hit the rim, and you're trying to get it so it careens off the rim further enough back where you can get the tip back and get a shot off, right? So just throwing it up there with a nice high arc like you normally would and having it bounce around the rim isn't going to do it for you, because his inside position guys are going to get the rebound. I mean, that's why they put it that way. So you really have to throw it up there with a little bit of juice on it to try to bank it off. You hit the backboard, bank it off the rim, and get it back far enough so somebody can tip it out and get another shot off. It's not that easy. It really isn't. And people were, as soon as he shot it, I was like, oh man, I've seen that happen so many times. They try to bank up the backboard and just hits and goes right in the goal. It's hard to miss those things. It really is.
And no one now, that rule, hit can't just be a blatant, against the backboard like handball or something.
Right.
But looking at guys, free throw shooting is a controllable. That's something that you can go practice all you want on your own. There's only so many hours technically that they're supposed to have you in practice. And really, you got to have that sua sponte, Latin for of your own accord or volition. You've got to do so much on your own to get better. And you think about when you played, knowing, I'm not dressing out. And then when the bell rung, you were there, you were ready. And that's what it's so hard to do, I bet, as a coach, is to tell the 9, 10, 11 guys, hey man, be ready. Kind of like that backup quarterback. And now you're starting to see, if you run an RPO offense in football, a lot of that hurry up, no huddle, you better have 3 quarterbacks. You might need them in one game.
Sure.
Because Ben Troop talks about other people. The NFL is a collision league. Well, college football, it's a collision league as well with the athletes. If you're 6'5", 280, and you're running full speed, when Vanderbilt put that girl out there as a kicker, I was like, you better pray to God they don't try end around fake field goal and some big defensive end doesn't come around there. It's not going to end well. I mean, and bottom line, I got 2 daughters, 2 boys. I wouldn't want them playing football. Not the girls. No. I mean, the boys did. But I think what I've seen out of this, Fairleigh Dickinson, Florida Atlantic, the Memphis people, again, just crushed by the end, the way that game ended. But the thing I like, and we're going to have Dr. Bill Hardgrave, the president of the University of Memphis, will be on with us Thursday morning to talk about plans they have, what University of Memphis is trying to do. But I love Penny Hardaway. I'm a Memphis guy. I'm an Auburn grad. He's competitive as hell. Yeah, he threw his water bottle on the court after the game, but what do you want? Apathy, or a guy that's mad and a locker room full of guys that are mad as hell and upset after a loss? What would you rather have?
Oh, you want the passion. You do. You got to have that passion boils over and it's contagious, right? But, I'm not a big fan of the throwing things and doing whatever to show your. I know. There's different ways to do it and to show your passion or whatever. And I love Penny Hardaway. I liked him as a player. I always thought he was amazing, and I thought he's doing a great job there. He's done a fantastic job there. They've got a great program. They won their the tournament and everything for them. But it's I love passion in coaches. I always have. That's why, somebody like Valvano or even like Musselman, as you see now, the guys that just get fired up, it's contagious. And you like that as opposed to the guys that are more stoic and more matter of fact. If I'm an athlete and I want to get motivated beyond just my own personal motivation, I want the coach to push my buttons and get me going, And going back to your point about those guys that sitting, the 8, the 10, 11, and 12 guys being ready, my take on that is like, if you really, really love the game, like if it's in your heart and you love the game, then as a player that might not ever play and see the bench or whatever, see the court or whatever, you still practice your butt off, because that's your time to play. So you're practicing hard. You're doing all the drills you got to do. You're staying in position to where, if you really love the game, I truly believe that all those guys, they have to be ready. And those that aren't, that, they just really don't really love the game the way they should, in my opinion. So,
yeah. And I totally agree with that. Talking about the passion, and I mean, Penny's a good guy. He puts his money in. He's given a lot to the University of Memphis. I'm talking in the millions out of his own pockets. And he loves the city. And don't want to bottle. I get it, but he was frustrated. They were all frustrated. But Florida Atlantic, again, that's how dangerous teams are. They were a 31-win team, Tommy, that had not played. They'd only played one team all season long that made it to the NCAA tournament. And I go back to the passion. Jim Valvano, watching his speech when he got up there and toward the end of his life, and he's talking and he's going on and on. It was just, I know I can go on and on sometimes. My dad goes, boy, make a point, but he's up there and he goes, oh yeah, see the guy back there, 30 seconds. He goes, 30 seconds, say, get out of here. He goes, panache, Right. I mean, that guy is still, it's just indelibly ingrained in our basketball DNA, but our sports DNA, about his 3 things you do every day, just the things he did. But the coolest thing about it was the fierce rivals with, Coach K and North Carolina. I mean, God, but at the end of his life, they were all trying to walk each other home. I mean, that's what you see in sports. Fierce, but you respect them, Tommy, don't you?
Oh yeah, you respect them. I mean, you can hate come on, I grew up hating Dean Smith, like hating him, like I was like, that guy, whatever. And I mean, but do you respect him? Of course, you respect what he did with his career, and the athletes that he brought to Chapel Hill and all that stuff. I mean, do Carolina fans hate Coach K with a passion and all like the nicknames they have for him and everything else? Of course they do. But at the end of the day, the true respect, mature fan would be idiotic not to respect Coach K and what he's done for the program, for the basketball around the world, everything. I mean, in my eyes, one of the greatest 4 or 5 coaches in all sports ever. I mean, his track record, you can't mess with it. You just between gold medals and national championships and everything else. But yeah, I mean, that's part of sports. That's what we love it. I mean, of course you want to say you hate somebody, whatever, but hate's a pretty strong word. You're just not pulling for them. You can't hate somebody unless you actually have met the person, talked to the person, shook their hand, spent some time with them. Right. And that's my opinion on it. Like, you don't know those guys just because they walk in the sidelines screaming and yelling and they look like a raving lunatic doesn't mean they are in real life. They're just passionate. And so I try not to pass judgment on all those kind of, those coaches or players or whatever until you actually meet them. Now, can I say, I don't like the guy or whatever just because of the way what I see from on TV? Sure. But, most all those guys are, coaches are good guys. They're out there to do the best they can as a coach and do their job. And if they're passionate, they're passionate, Yeah,
you're right. And that's something that, I tell people, hate. No, I don't. That's not a virtue I heard taught in mass by a priest ever in my life. And I want to beat you. But, fierce rivalry, you hate them, use that term figuratively. Right. Yeah. But you do respect them. And because if your rival wasn't any good, you wouldn't want to beat them so bad. And that's right. I've always wondered about the mindset of people who sit on their ass in the stands at a football game, waiting to hear the score of their rival and hoping they're losing. I'm like, well, think about it. At the end of the year, man, that NC State North Carolina game at the end of last year in football, Tommy, how that was on what, Black Friday, wasn't it? This past
probably. Yeah, it's right around Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, God, you think they don't care over there? You're out of your mind.
Right.
Hey, no, what do you call the Textile Bowl? Clemson, NC State?
Clemson, NC State is a Textile Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, because I call Interstate 85 from Montgomery up to Petersburg, Virginia, the Textile highway. I mean, it's just, LaGrange, you had Interface. Of course, you had Milliken. Roger Milliken was out of Spartanburg. I think he was probably a big donor to Wofford. Tommy, I was the only kid in elementary school, because my dad, being an architect, would be chasing work all over the country and the world. He'd always bring back souvenirs. I had a Wofford Terriers hoodie. Big old,
wow.
What's the Wofford? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm wearing the hoodie. But you think about the basketball. Furman, I didn't realize that was Furman's first win in the NCAA tournament since 1974. And the passion. And I was texting Bucky McMillan, the coach at Samford, yesterday, trying to get him on, and he wasn't going to be able to come on this morning. We're going to try to do it later this week or next week. But they were co-champions with Samford and Furman in the regular season. But the Southern Conference, there are 32 conferences in America. There's some pretty damn good basketball out there. And what makes everybody so excited is the unknown. Again, out of 20 million ESPN brackets, after the first day, there were only 653 in the country who got it all right. So it's true what Al Goldman, former technical market analyst at AG Edwards, used to say on the Squawk Box every day. When the market would be going crazy, he'd say, we can't all be right at the same time, and at least not very often.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and it's just that, I mean, it's just, that's what makes, like, I don't know, the NCAA tournament just can put schools on the map. I mean, everybody in the country now knows about, like, what is it? UMBC that was a couple of years ago made the run, and now Fairleigh Dickinson. People are like, where's that? I'm sure they was probably one of the, if you could check the analytics on Google, I'm sure there was like one of the top hits for the day was like, where is Fairleigh Dickinson? Or what conference do they play in, and what all this stuff, because people just don't know about them. But that's what's so awesome about getting in the dance is these little schools now get put on the map, and people will remember it. And I mean, only the second time ever in the history of the bracket that the 16 seed upset the 1. I mean, but golly, Purdue, man, what in the world happens to those guys? The last couple of years, I mean, I think it was like a 12 seed, a 13 seed, a 15 seed, and a 1 seed, and a 16 seed they've lost to in the last 4 years or something. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think Fairleigh Dickinson had been on the map in the late 70s, and one of my favorite movies of all time, it's the alma mater of Fawn Leibowitz. Remember in Animal House? Fawn Leibowitz, killed in kiln explosion. Oh, God. Could you get 3 dates from my friends? Or was that Emily Dickinson College? Or whatever. But there you go. Do you mind if we dance with your dates? Why, not at all.
Not at all.
If I were in your shoes, I'd be leaving. What a great idea. But Tommy, that's what I love about you. You are as fired up as anybody that I ever talked to on this show about basketball, about just how important it is. But I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's like there are certain programs or certain conferences that need to be good. We got to get the ACC going again. You've got one team from the league. We're going to talk more about it after the break for a few more minutes before you got to go. But Miami is still there alive. They've got to play Houston.
Yep.
Jim Larinaga, they won the ACC this year. They play a 20-game conference schedule. Man, have you ever met him and talked basketball with him?
I have not ever talked basketball with him. I've met him one time or two, just in a very passive kind of briefing thing, but I haven't sat and talked basketball with him. But I have the utmost respect for him. He does a phenomenal job. He gets those guys playing hard. They get after you. They're going to give Houston a good run. They just are. I just really think it'll be a close game. I don't think they'll beat them because I don't know if they have the horses, but I think it'll be a lot closer than people think. I think the prediction on ESPN is about 90% chance of Houston winning that game. But Miami's got a great player in Wong. I mean, there's ACC Player of the Year. He's they're going to get after him. It's going to be a lot better game than I think people think. So.
Yeah, and Houston's defense, though, they gave up a lot of points in the first half against Auburn, almost 50. And they've been holding teams to the mid-50s most of the year. And they're a big physical team. But Miami, they're guard heavy. And you watch them play, God, they play a brand of basketball that most people I don't think are real familiar with, and they're not real comfortable with it. It's like having big guys that play with their back to the basket. You just don't see that very often. And before we go to the break, Tommy, think about it. When you and I were in school, in college and all, you had those big guys that a lot of them, there were 30 or 40 of them around the country, like Oscar Tshiebwe. Maybe not that good, but you had the guys that, the rebounders. I mean, is Dennis Rodman the greatest rebounder that you've ever seen?
God, I would have to say so. I mean, watching him do what he did in the NBA was just unbelievable. His work ethic and the way he just took care of his body. People don't give him enough credit. He was a crazy man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he is. We're going to be right back with more on Sidelines to this. Say something real quick about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. Everybody needs to work their bodies, work their brains, work their minds. Rumbleboxinggym.com. There are going to be 3 locations. The first one, Ann Campley, is opening early to mid-April in Midtown Memphis at Union and McLean. Brand new studio with glass looking out all over. It's going to be beautiful. On one side of the studio, 25 weight benches with dumbbells. In the middle, group training, 45-minute intense instructor-led workouts. And on the right, 25 punching bags. Check it out now. You can join at a discounted rate in advance. Go check it out. But go to the website, rumbleboxinggym.com rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. And go there. It is going to be the place to be. We're going to be doing live shows as soon as we can get inside of there. Might even do get some of the workouts on while we are in the studio. But great to have them as a sponsor. Tommy, the SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10. Big 10 has one team left. It's Michigan State. And we talked about it again yesterday. Tom Izzo, this is his 15th Sweet 16. I think he's been to 8 or 9 Final Fours.
It's probably about right.
And one national championship in 2000. But he coaches his kids tough. He doesn't get all the notoriety that Ohio State and Michigan do, but they are always there. And they're playing Kansas State. Who do you think's going to win that one?
I think Kansas State's going to take that one. I just think their style of play doesn't really match up so well with Michigan State's. But, Michigan State, you got to give them credit. I really thought Marquette was going to be a lot better this year coming out of that bracket than anything. I had them beating Michigan State in mine. I had Marquette in a couple of my brackets winning the whole thing. I mean, I thought they were a really top-tier team, and but they just seemed like they really couldn't get it together much against Michigan State. But, Kansas State's a good game. I mean, it'll be a good game, but I think Kansas State's going to win that one for sure. And, the one team we haven't really talked about, which I think is a great story in itself, and it's kind of get lost a little bit because of the Fairleigh Dickinson and all that stuff, but Princeton. I mean, Princeton's a 15 seed out of the Ivy League, and they take down Arizona, which is, you think, oh, my gosh, that's a huge upset. And then they take on, Missouri, who's the number 7 ranked or 7 seed, and they handle Missouri. They beat them by almost 15, I think. So it wasn't even like it was close. It's not like they're winning these things in like grand fashion, last minute buzzer beaters, whatever. They're playing good basketball. And Princeton has got, then they play Creighton next. And then they'll probably run into Alabama on the top side of that bracket. So I think that'll probably be the end of their run, I would think, just from an athletic standpoint alone. But heck, man, I mean, did you watch Princeton play basketball? It's a beautiful thing to watch. It really is. I mean, that kind of reminds me back in the days when Pete Carrill was there. and they used to run the Princeton backdoor offense all the time. In fact, we played against Princeton a few times when I was in school, and they were a hard team to prepare for. No matter how many times in practice you ran the backdoors and the drills or whatever, it's just, unless you play against it almost every other day, that is a hard offense to practice against and to get ready for defense. And Princeton's team right now is good. I'd be interested to see how they do the rest of the way. Yeah.
Well, they're fun to watch, and again, it's not like the World Series when the networks like to have a Yankees, Dodgers, or the Cubs in there, which happens about as often. Haley's Comet comes by, but that's just not. It's almost the opposite. It's the scheme that people love to follow. People went nuts over St. Peter's, and again, I love to see the analytics on Google searches for St. Peter's. And that funny thing about it. Fairleigh Dickinson. Yeah, you're right. They'll bump up. Michigan State, they're a fixture. They've been there many, many times.
Sure.
And you look at San Diego State. I mean, a lot of people like Dave Cody, they do look like a football team. That's a Mountain West school, and they really have looked impressive in the first 2 games. Of course, you got 4 more games to go if you're going to win it all.
Yep.
Everybody's got to play 6. You got to win 6. Only one team's going to do it. Looking around at, you talk about Creighton and Florida Atlantic and these, I guess you want to call it Princeton, obscure teams. It's not that they're obscure. It's just that you don't see their rosters with 4- and 5-star players on there and Power 5. But do the break that 3 SEC 1, Big 10 1, the Big 12 has 2 with Texas and Kansas State. It's spread evenly. You don't see that in the college football playoff. Out of 131 D1 schools, we've got maybe 14, which is 11.6% of the field. In the 9 years we've had a playoff, have made it. That's probably why there's much more interest.
Yeah, well, that's what the thing is, and that's what I love about college basketball. I mean, when it comes down to it, is that Christian Favano used to always say you got 5 athletes on the court versus 5 athletes on the court. Anything can happen. I mean, you get a guy that all of a sudden gets in this quote-unquote zone on a team, and he starts hitting 3 balls from all over the court and whatever, and plays, and they're going after you. Anybody can beat anybody. It's a great – that's the equalizer in basketball, whereas in football, I mean, it's just there's too many big factors that play into the game of football with like size and speed and just overall like athletic ability of 11 on 11. And I mean, occasionally you'll get the upsets of like the Appalachian State beating Michigan in the big house, those kind of things when you're like, oh my gosh. But it's so far and few between. I mean, like when all those teams play the cupcakes part of the schedule at the beginning of the year, and NC State's playing the smaller schools in order to just get the wins and all that stuff. I mean, you just know they're going to win the game. I mean, it's just speed and size are going to take over. It's just not going to happen. But in basketball, in times like this, it's what makes it so great. Is like all of a sudden everybody's like, whoa, Princeton probably hasn't been on TV, a handful of times all year. And if it was, it's probably just up in that area. And, now they're on national television on a national stage and everybody in the country's talking about them. And it's just a beautiful thing. That would never happen in football because a Princeton could never make a run in football and play against a Missouri and win. Yeah. It just is not going to happen. And I mean, you could play 100 times and Missouri's going to win 100 times. I'm sorry, in football, that's just probably what's going to happen. But in basketball, it's only 5-on-5. Anything can happen. And one guy can get hot and the ball game's over. And next thing you know, Princeton's moving on. Is exactly what happened. And that's what I love about college basketball is all the underdog stories and the people that just start believing in themselves, believing as teammates that they can do anything. And next thing you know, they're doing anything, making the impossible possible, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, if you were out in Hollywood and you had a script, it was written, the path to the college football playoff as it currently is, 4 teams, you gave that to Woody Harrelson, and you gave the path to the national championship in college basketball, 357 teams eligible. And you talk about what a great story this is. As Woody Harrelson said on SNL a couple of weeks ago, I threw the script away. I mean, you throw the football one out, but this basketball one, and again, I've always had a penchant for these small private Catholic universities. Gonzaga, it's Jesuits out on the West Coast, and Spokane against UCLA. I'm telling you, I'm a big Mick Cronin fan just because he's a tough guy. But man, there's and Tommy, we run out of time, but God, you get me so damn fired up talking about this. But I'm giving you the script. Just go make the movie. I mean, that's what we need. It's called March Madness. And by the way, that Nike movie is going to be awesome. But thank you again for taking time to join us. We really appreciate it. Tell people how they can follow you and keep up. You've got a great production company in Atlanta that people need to hear about.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. I'll just summarize this as the NCAA tournament to me is the greatest reality TV that's ever been made. I mean, that's the best way to sum it up, right? You never know what's going to happen. People can follow me. My production company is PAC 30 Productions, PACK 30 Productions, based out of Atlanta. Do a Emmy award-winning video production and corporate work and commercials, and you name it, we do it. And then I can follow my talent work and my movies and my show hosting and all the other stuff I do at Tommy Kane -Talent. You can follow me there. And thanks for having me on, Rob. It's always a pleasure. And dude, I already can't wait for as soon as the weekend's over, I'm like, come on, Thursday, let's go. Get here Thursday. I need some basketball.
Put that microwave button on. I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right, Tommy, thanks so much. Go Wolfpack.
You got it, guys. See you, man.
All right, take care. That is Tommy Kane over doing our ACC report out of Atlanta. And we're going to go about an hour east up in Clark County, the classic city, Athens, Georgia. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covering Georgia for us. And Jordan, I know the last couple of weeks you have been busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight because there's been most recently you had Georgia's pro day, and did that take 2 days? I mean, that was I'm sure quite an event. Let's talk about that and spring practice, the $1 million question, the quarterback battle at Georgia, but also fill us in what you heard the pro scouts and everybody at Georgia's pro day saying about Stetson Bennett IV, the future mayor of Blackshear, Georgia, because he looked, if you just didn't know his name and you looked at his numbers, I've said it all along, he should have won the Heisman. Why is he not being considered a first-round pick, and why other people are? Is it just they've written the narrative and they don't want to change it?
Yeah, I thought he performed really well. We had a chance to watch him throw, and we talked to him after the fact, and he said, that there was a few throws he wished he had back. But, I think he's done himself a real service with how he performed there, how he performed at the Combine. And, I think the biggest thing with him, he gets the knock on his height. But, there's been plenty of guys, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, in these last 10, 20 years who have risen up, and gotten over that kind of, the NFL kind of likes to have those numbers they want their guys to hit as far as height, weight. But, I think someone's going to be proven really, really smart. I think someone's going to draft him, I think 3rd or 4th round. And, again, I think it's funny how much, you've kind of seen people sort of back off Bryce Young. I still think he'll be a first-round pick. But, it sure looks like Stetson's bigger than Bryce. And I think Bryce is a really good player. I don't want anyone listening to think I don't think he's good. But to knock Stetson on size, and he's I think got the advantage on Bryce Young. But yeah, at the pro day, I thought Stetson made the most of the day. Wasn't perfect. You don't expect anybody to be. And I think that teams noticed. And I'll be really intrigued when we get to April, when his name goes off the board, where he goes. Because I think he can stick around. I think he's got a chance to play for 7-10 years. Maybe not be a starter, but look, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks that are on the bench. And he's the kind of guy, if he gets a chance, you better watch out. Well,
Billy Roberts was going to join us in just a minute from over in Atlanta. And, he and I went to school together. He told me, he goes, I've stood next to Kyler Murray. He was in Atlanta for some function. And Billy is 7 feet tall. No, I'm kidding. Now, Billy said Kyler Murray might be 5'8.5", 5'9". So all this talk about Stetson Bennett. And the other thing is, what I heard about Stetson Bennett in Dallas was he was supposed to be staying with some friends. He went out and he couldn't remember the address, and it ended up, looking dumb. But I'm going to go ahead and admit I did something that stupid before, And I mean, it's just, I've been out all night, and trust me, it's happened. But when you're Stetson Bennett, people are going to go all over it. I'm a big fan of his, just because so many people told him, no. The Georgia coaches told him he should consider maybe doing something else. I want that guy leading my team. I want him on my team for damn sure. And looking at the throws and what he did at Pro Day in Indianapolis at the Combine, what did you see and what did you hear the scouts saying over in Athens at Georgia's Pro Day?
Well, I think it's a situation where people at this point, they know what they're getting in Stetson Bennett. And I think that if any, the Combine, the Pro Day, I think did plenty to help him. But I think his performance in the playoff is what teams are really going to go back to. He played so well against Georgia's top competition. I mean, you could argue, even going to the SEC title game, LSU, Ohio State, TCU, three of the toughest teams, maybe Tennessee's the other team, and Oregon was really good too. Yeah. And, I mean, he played darn near lights out with a lot on the line. I think that'll do more for Stetson than anything else. But, I think that teams got to see the way he's able to move in the pocket. I think that they saw he's got an arm on him. And I think, too, something that'll be interesting going forward, he had some of the current receivers running routes for him. And there were people really excited. Marcus Rosemi-Jack Saint, who's a guy that's coming back. He made a great one-handed catch. Dylan Bell's only a sophomore, and I saw a lot of people talking about him after the fact. That's a good problem to have for Georgia. Is they got some young guys that went, and they went out there and ran routes because they worked with Stetson. Stetson kind of knows what he's getting. But I think Dylan Bell got a lot of work, and it only means so much. I know it's just a workout, but I think if you're a Georgia fan looking to this coming year, you should be really excited because I think those guys turned some heads and probably had some scouts saying, hey, let's remember these names in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and Billy Roberts is on with us right now. We've got Jordan Hill, Billy, 24/7 Sports over in Athens, talking about Georgia and the Pro Day and Stetson Bennett and all the great stuff that he's done in his career. But I'm with you, Jordan. His nickname ought to be Big Time, because in the biggest games, on the biggest stages, he shows up and he gets wins. Billy, why is it? Now you were telling me, and you're 7 feet tall, but you were telling me when you were standing next to Kyler Murray, he's certainly not taller than Stetson Bennett IV.
No, I stood next to him in Atlanta during the Super Bowl a couple years ago when he was getting ready to enter the draft, and they were saying he was 6 feet. I'm 5'10" on a good day, and he's no taller than me. I literally stood 1 foot away from him as he had a slice of pizza. He was on that Barstool Sports show, and they were doing their pizza evaluation, the one slice thing. I was 1 foot away from him. He actually, was commenting on my car while he was eating the piece of pizza. And I'm like, you're an NFL quarterback? And he is, but he's no bigger than I am, and I'm not a big guy.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. But it's not that he can't play. But, God, what did Kyler Murray do in college? And look what Stetson Bennett has done in college against the toughest competition. More right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back with you. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports over in Athens covering Georgia, and Billy Roberts over in Atlanta. And Jordan, the quarterback battle at Georgia, Stetson Bennett was there for a long time. This time last year, there were people going, God, is he coming back? I mean, Tony Barnhart said, speaking to the Georgia College of Business before the season, people going, do you really think we can win with him? And the number of times, I mean, okay, he proved the critics, he shut them up, Stetson did. But now you got Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton, and you got Brock Vandegrift, 3 big-time recruits, 4 and 5 stars in that room. Todd Monken's gone. Let's talk about the new offensive mindset, what they might change or might keep it the same. Why fix something that's not broken?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was actually, before we got on here, looking through some quotes just from last week with some of the players. And Cedric Van Pran, who is the starting center, talked about the offense and said, we are approaching it like it's a new offense. That doesn't mean it's going to be totally different. He said, but you got a new coordinator with different tendencies. Said you got a lot of new playmakers from last year. You lost guys to the NFL. A.D. Mitchell transfers to Texas. Yeah. You bring in 2 receivers who transfer in from Mississippi State and Missouri. And he said, we're taking it like we got a lot to learn because there will be some new things. But based on everything everyone has said, a lot of this is going to be the same. I asked Kirby about, will the verbiage change between Monken and Bobo? Because that's a lot that a lot of those guys got to learn. And Kirby said a lot of that stuff staying the same. And he made the point that the offense, as Monken called it, a lot of that was there before Monken was hired as Georgia's OC. He didn't come in and bring that. They've had guys. Dale McGee's been on the staff the entire time Kirby's been in Athens. You've got Todd Hartley, who's been there since 2019. You've got guys that, have worked together for a while. And, I don't think they're going to be into a situation where they're going back to square one with how they call the offense, how they run it. And I do think it helped Mike Bobo a ton that he was on staff last year as an analyst. He got to see it up close. I'm sure it's not going to be exactly how Todd Monken would call it, but, it's probably going to change fairly significantly going into this year had Todd stayed just because Stetson Bennett's leaving. So, I think people are a little worried, which I get, especially because, we're still waiting for the season. We're still several months away. So all you can do is kind of worry and think about it and fret. But I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. There will be some differences, but I think that was going to happen whether or not Todd Monken came back.
Well, it's like, you've said it before. Kirby Smart did not hire Mike Bobo as his offensive coordinator because he's friends with him. He likes him. They went to Georgia together. What does he like more than anything? He loves his family, God, and country, but he loves winning. And so there you go. Jim, I just think, Jordan, people love to insert what they want to happen, and so they inject all this negativity in that direction. But with the talent Georgia has, and it's not saying anybody can do it, I would trust what they are doing. Billy?
Absolutely. I mean, Saban has cycled in how many coordinators over the run that he's been in and hadn't hurt the program in any way because he's locked the culture in. And you hate to say coordinators are kind of plug and play over there, but they kind of are. And Kirby has done the same type of deal. So, he's going to be successful over there as long as Kirby wants to be over there, and he's a young guy. He'll be there for 20-something years. Not long ago we were saying, the Bobby Bowden model where somebody's out of school 30 years, that's never going to happen again. Kirby's, 43 or something? He could be there 20 more years, which is a terrifying thought for us Auburn people. kudos to him. But
The rest
I think
of the
he
free world.
created a plug and play, scenario with those coordinators. There's going to be more coordinators come and go over there, the more success they have in Athens. So he'll be just fine. I'm not worried about Georgia. I'm worried about Auburn right now. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Clemson, if you're South Carolina, look, things, we go in cycles, but Georgia, again, Billy and Jordan, the most ridiculous question I've seen asked on social media, on Twitter, was before the playoffs this year, is Georgia considered a blue blood in college football? I mean, that is tall. I mean, you've got to be a living brain donor to ask a question like that. And it all comes from that narrative of 1980 to 2021, 41 years. Georgia didn't. But Georgia from 1980, I'm curious, Jordan, if you know the stat, but I'd be willing to bet you a sack full of crystals and a case of your favorite beer that Georgia's probably number 6, 7, 8 winningest college football program in that 41-year period. And I think Billy would back me up on that, because we got to play y'all every year. And Billy's from LaGrange, lives in Atlanta, Brookhaven. But, I mean, Georgia fans, it's not like they've been, living on ramen noodles and cabbage water.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes down to the fact that Georgia was a sleeping giant, that they kept getting so close. And we've talked about this on this show multiple times. 2002, when they play Florida, I think David Pollock has an interception. He tries to lateral it to a teammate who runs it for a touchdown. Well, he kind of threw it ahead of himself, so they wave off that touchdown, and then Florida wins that game, and that touchdown could have been the difference for Georgia. They would have gone undefeated. They wind up playing in the Sugar Bowl instead of being in the national title game. You go to 2012, play Alabama, driving down, trying to win the game in the SEC title game, to go play Notre Dame, which very clearly whoever wins that game is going to win the national title. And Chris Conley falls down short of the end zone, and they run out of time. The knock that Georgia has when you talk about programs, the top programs, is the fact that they didn't win it. It took so long. But you see that Kirby has awoken that sleeping giant. There's no sleeping giant in Athens right now. And I think for fans like Billy and for people who follow, the rivals and the other SEC teams, it may be a long 5, 6, 7 years, because it just doesn't seem like this is going away anytime soon.
No. Well, and here's the thing about Georgia, living as I do nearby, I've observed it a long time. It's amazing how a president of a university can kind of get the mission going in the wrong direction. And Auburn has had a couple of presidents now that have been misfires. Georgia had that with Adams. When he showed up over there, he changed the emphasis and the priorities just enough, and he treated Dooley fairly badly. I would think that's fair to say, right? And
yes,
maybe he saw him as a rival and you need to kind of send him packing. I don't know, but that seemed awfully premature and strange. Rick probably would have had a lot more success during that time. He might have had bad luck that the administration at the very top was in flux for a couple of years. You got to have the full support of everybody in the university to have consistent winning like Georgia's doing right now. Everybody's got to get behind a leader like Kirby and give him unquestioned support, give him the facilities, give him whatever he wants, because he knows what he's doing. Rick was winning 10 games a year almost, and it did average 10 wins a year, and got really close a couple times. Good guy. Everybody liked him. It was ambitious for Georgia to make a change there. That was something that the rest of us as rivals said, that's interesting. Georgia's such a nice place, makes you scratch your head a little bit that they would do that, but they did, and it's paid off for them. Sitting as we do from Auburn's standpoint, Auburn's got a long checkered history of presidents that have been, nuts and changed the direction of the university. We've had that challenge down there for as long as Rob and I were in school. And it's probably just now getting corrected. We've got a president in the last 9 months or 10 months that might, change the direction. So it's not always the coach. We all fixate on who the coach is and is he installing a culture. Sometimes it's at the very top. You got to look at that person. And I think that Georgia suffered with Adams, not from a fundraising standpoint. because that's what he was brought in to do, and he is good at that. But he certainly didn't care a whole lot about winning football games. And they got a big stadium over there that, they need to sell tickets to. And, the rest is history. Kirby's done a great job, I think. But he's got the support of the current administration, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, you think about how close, and even what's interesting with this current staff, Stacey Searles, Brian McClendon, they were on that staff with Mark Richt. And I asked Stacey Searles just how different things are. Guy played at Auburn, and, he coached with Richt 07 to 10. And he just talks about the facilities. I mean, just, they didn't have an indoor practice facility back then. When we had that pro day, Chip Towers from the AJC, I was talking to him, and he said, I remember when Matthew Stafford, this was a guy that wound up being the number one pick. Yeah. He said, we went out there. He had to go out there and throw and rain and win because their pro day, they didn't have anywhere else to go. So, just the amount of facilities, the buy-in that the university has had to set Georgia up, I don't think you can downplay it. I think you made a great point, Billy. I mean, you got to have that support because I do think really if Mark Richt had the support that Kirby has now, that he would have won a national championship.
I think so too. I agree with that completely.
Yeah. And you talk about it. It's funny when people, Georgia, you think just they print money. I mean, Atlanta, an hour to the west, a huge alumni base, a state with over 11 million people. But it starts with the president, fundraising. And if you don't ask people to give, they think you don't need it. Unless you let people know you need the money. I mean, look, I know plenty of wealthy people. I manage, our team, a lot of money. I've been doing this 32 years almost in wealth management. But you know what? If you don't let people know you need money, they won't support you. They won't write you a check. And I think Georgia, that was kind of the MO is, Georgia, they're loaded. You got Atlanta an hour to the west. So what? Unless anyone's asking for the order, no one's ever going to say yes or no. At least give them a chance to say no. Jordan, along those lines, just a few minutes before we let you go, how big an emphasis, basketball, we talked about it at LSU, at Auburn, at Alabama, at Georgia, at all these schools. People will support it, but we don't always have the commitment to win. Mike White just finished his first year at Georgia. What grade do you give him and the Georgia athletic department and the university in terms of support and providing him with what he needs? Because I'm sure Mike White, 95% of the people who are successful, who aren't successful, fail because they don't have a vision. But that top 5% do have a vision.
I would give Mike probably a C+, and that might be a little harsh, but the problem that they are running into going into year two is they don't really have many building blocks from year one. I mean, basically point guard Justin Hill, who was not a starter, he came off the bench and played really well, but the only freshman they had last year, he left after about 10 games, transferred to Texas Tech. You had 3 or 4 guys who were out of eligibility after this year. They're moving on. We found out yesterday, Terry Roberts, who we didn't expect to come back, he's declaring for the draft. He could still, potentially decide to come back. But, it looks like he's going to leave. So, that they really faltered down the stretch. I think this was a team that, they kind of lacked the leadership you needed, especially in the backcourt. I think that they struggled to get the guys they needed to really run this team the right way. And they ran into a buzzsaw at Alabama and at Arkansas, and that was basically the end of the season from there. I mean, they just kind of coasted, played really hard in losses to Florida and South Carolina. But, I think that this offseason is huge. They've got to go in the portal. They got to get help there. And I think they're also going to look at some high school commitments, some guys who have signed to other schools but have had coaching changes, because you have a window where you can go try to land some of those guys. They really got to reload this roster, and it's going to be of the utmost importance if they're going to take a step forward in year two.
It never rains in Southern California. The next one is, does anyone ever graduate anymore since the virus? I mean, there's guys, Billy and mine's age will be playing, going, Billy Roberts has another year. Billy started his college career at Georgia.
Well, we used to joke with our buddy Frank from LSU that, Major Ogilvy, and Jordan may be too young to remember who he was, but he was a guy at Alabama that had 9 years of eligibility. And, he was a great ball player, but good God, he would never leave. I mean, that guy was there forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, one more on the pro day. Last year, Jordan, I love having you on because you're the only guy I've ever heard put it in the perspective that I see it and Billy gets it. If you're a Georgia fan, who are your biggest rivals? Well, on that eastern side, it might be South Carolina or Clemson. Down south, Florida. Over on the west side, Georgia, up toward Dalton and Tryon, which is where Stacey Searles is from, Tryon, Georgia. It might be Tennessee. It might be Alabama if you live in Cedartown. But God almighty, man, it's a wild – it's an incredible deal what they have over there at Georgia, but nobody graduates anymore. Who technically could Jalen Carter come back if he wanted to?
He could have. I mean, the NFL is different than basketball. Once you declare in the NFL, you are gone. But this past year they had 3 super seniors. It was Stetson, it was Robert Beal, who had been there forever. He was a 5-star back in the day, and Chris Smith. And we're almost, especially, I feel like it's really more extreme in basketball as far as sort of the years, but. With football, I'm trying to think. There's not really a ton of super seniors on Georgia's team.
Okay.
A lot of those guys, that kind of speaks to the opportunities those guys have to go pro. A lot of those guys that are good enough have moved on. Tremel Walthour is the only super senior I can think of. He's a defensive end that was a starter and played a lot last year. Off the top of my head, I think he's the only one. And I'll be so happy when we get past those guys potentially, because the problem is potentially having that extra year. So we have to go into the end of the season and say, well, this linebacker could come back. We don't know. We got to watch his Instagram post or his Twitter.
I think Bo Nix is going to try to come after spring practice during that transfer portal and come play at Georgia his last year. It'll be year number 7 for him.
Hey,
I think he doesn't like living in Oregon. He wants to come back.
I don't know if you know this, Billy. I covered Auburn for a while, so bring it on. I've covered Bo. I know what it's like.
That's what's so. You are damn good, Jordan. Look, we've run out of time, and I appreciate you staying on long with us. I'm about to go to a break. Let people know how they can follow you and keep up with all your great work, because we really treasure it when you're on here.
Yeah, dogs247.com on Twitter, at Jordan Davis Hill, at dogs247. I'm going to be watching practice this afternoon, so get a chance, probably 15, 20 minutes or so, and see what's going on with the dogs.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll tell you one thing. That last year you had 5 in the first round, just off the defense, 15 overall. Last question. You think you can beat 15 this year?
Not quite, but I think it'll probably be around 12 would be my guess.
Oh, boy, really slumming over there.
Yeah, rough.
Yeah, it's a rough time. Like Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports Dogs. Billy Roberts will be right after this. Jordan, thanks again. Look forward to the next visit right after this. All right, Rob Browne back with Billy Roberts over in Atlanta for the final segment on this edition of Sidelines Sports, College Sports Blitz. I want to say something again about the importance of location, teamwork, and people that will work for you all the time. If you are moving, buying, selling a house, you live in Memphis, maybe you've been relocated to Memphis and you're listening. Our listening audience goes far and wide. Call Eleanor Maynard, Hobson Realty. You go to the www.sidelines.live website. You will see the Hobson Realty hyperlink on there with Eleanor's picture. Her background, very simple. I've known her 12 years. Bottom line, she is top 5% out of 4,600 realtors in the Memphis market in 2022. She is a 4th generation Memphis realtor, 3rd generation Hobson Realtor. If you were looking again, buying or selling a house, it's a lot of work. There's a lot involved. Getting the whole team involved, closing attorneys, banks, everything. It starts with one call to Eleanor Maynard. It's a turnkey operation. Her team will have your back. She works for a great firm. She's a great person. Hobson Realty, Eleanor Maynard. That is the call you need to make. And also, Ann Camp Lee, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. Billy, this is one of our sponsors. Ann Camp Lee's opening up 3 of these locations in Memphis. The first one opening up around mid-April at Union and McLean. In the studio, you'll have 25 weight benches on one side with the dumbbells, barbells, and everything. In the middle, 45-minute workout, group workout. On the other side of the room, you have 25 punching bags, engaging both sides of the brain, working your hands, your feet, every muscle in your body. It's like dry land version of swimming, that much of a workout. You go through a 45-minute workout at rumbleboxinggym.com. Check them out on the website. There are lowered membership rates if you join now. Go check out the facility. It will be opening soon. You need to join. It is a great workout. rumbleboxinggym.com. Billy, man, there's so much happening. But it's funny about these super seniors. Doug Dean, the AU docent in Birmingham, pointed out you have 11 basketball players in the field of 68, 25 years or older. These super seniors, it really does show up in basketball. And that's why a team like Fairleigh Dickinson, Florida Atlantic, Princeton, you don't see many guys probably coming into Princeton via the portal or leaving Princeton to go somewhere else. But the true teams that have chemistry, they're really stepping up to the plate in March Madness, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. I'll draw you back to that Auburn-Houston game the other day. I know you and I both probably watched that with great interest.
Yes.
It's a challenge putting together a brand new team and playing rotation every single year, and Bruce Pearl's as good as anybody. But I noticed in that game, they were up by 10 at the half. And but in the second half, the strategy they had been deploying, which was kind of, go for the drive through the paint and draw fouls, which was working well against Houston. They completely got away from that. And, I think a more veteran team with veteran leadership would have gotten them to stick to the plan that was working. But they seemed to all of a sudden devolve into like 5 individual players out there in the second half versus playing as a team. Maybe that's just me, as a fan with the sour grapes watching that. But, it was frustrating. And I think a more veteran team with veteran leadership probably would have corrected that and probably would have pulled off that upset.
Well, Calvin Sampson down 51-41 at the half. They really, they held Auburn to 23 points in the second half, gave up 51 in the first half. Hell, Houston was maybe the number 1 defensive team in the country. And then they used a great strategy. Just foul Auburn that can get the free throws. They were right. 19 of 37 at the line. You see coaching when you look at a team like Princeton, they're going to run a lot of sets. Then you look at a team like Kentucky that has a wealth of talent, absolute, just endless supply of talent. And this year, John Calipari had more experience on his team, but they went out in the second round. Look at Arkansas. They've got 4 freshmen. Eric Musselman, last 2 years, he made it to the Elite Eight, leaning on one of his freshmen. This year, 4. As Nick Smith was out in the middle of the season, came back late. They were 2-5 in the regular season conference games. But Eric Musselman, that's his brilliance to get these players. And I don't know if Nick Smith's a lottery pick. Like Coach John Brady says on our show, I've coached a lottery picker too in my day of coaching. They don't go out and put up 6 or 7 points and 3 rebounds. They're doing 20 and 12 night in, night out. Okay. He coached Glenn Big Baby Davis. He coached Stromile Swift, Collins Temple III. He's coached a few of them. But they all know Nick Smith can play. Black, Walsh. They've got some players. But he's got them all believing in the team and putting the personal stat sheets on the sideline. As you talk so much about, Billy, temperamental, young tennis players, I look at that Arkansas team, and they're going up against a UConn team that has been under the radar. They were way up front early in the season, kind of fell back in the back of the pack. Here they are at the end. Musselman is paid when you look at what he's done now for a third straight season. He's a great coach, and his players would run through a brick wall for him.
Yeah, well, I think that you had mentioned this on previous shows that the caliber of coaching talent in the SEC is dramatically risen in terms of basketball. Everybody's prioritizing it. They're, spending money on better coaches, and, it's showing up in the tournament. The SEC teams all survived a grueling SEC season. They're battle tested. A lot of them have done very well in the tournament and pulled off a few upsets along the way. And I think that that's exactly right. And Arkansas is a great exemplar of that. You've also mentioned in baseball, SEC baseball has benefited from better coaches because money has been emphasized, and all the programs are getting better and better and better in SEC baseball. So I think that that's what's going on. All that money is showing up in terms of the best coaches money can buy, and then the teams follow.
You talk about, baseball. This past weekend was opening weekend for SEC play. I mean, God, the sweeps. Just Auburn was swept. Georgia was swept at home by South Carolina, who's 20-1 this year. They look like they're getting back to, I don't know if they're back to Ray Tanner form, back-to-back national championships in 2010 and 11. But this is a vicious league. Ole Miss goes and gets swept on the road at Vanderbilt, the defending national champions.
Yeah.
Look at Mississippi State. They won a national championship 2 years ago. Yeah. They got drilled at Kentucky. I think the combined score was 35-11 as a football game, okay? Did you know Mississippi State, believe it or not, them and LSU were the cradle of college baseball in terms of attendance and importance and all. Mississippi State has now lost 14 consecutive SEC baseball games going back to the end of last season. They didn't even make the playoff. They didn't even make Hoover last year. That's how competitive SEC baseball is, Billy.
Yeah.
And remember August of 21, I remember we'll chronicle the Braves come back. August of 21, they were below 500. You, as an accomplished Bravesologist, along with Frank Duffy, talked about Liberty Media, $147 million budget. They're pretty tight. The Dodgers, $250 million. Other teams, more money. But the Braves figured it out.
Yeah.
As they call him, Snitty, the manager. He figured it out. You can't get.
Well, what they did, and which is smart, they got a superior farm system, and when they get young players that they make it to the major league level, they immediately extend them for long-term contracts to kind of buy out their free agency, so they don't have a guy, either saying pay me $300 million or I'm gone. They get the best years of his professional career, not at a discount, but at a more attainable price than like what the Nationals had to do with Juan Soto. They lost him to the Padres, and he's now going to renegotiate another $300 million deal that the Nationals couldn't pay. The Braves are never going to be in a position where they can write those kind of checks for free agents. So they took Acuna and they locked him up for 8 or 9 years at $10 million a year.
Yeah,
and they'll have him until he's 30 years old. So they've found a different way to compete rather than just throwing money at it the way the Yankees have done for a long time and the Dodgers are doing now.
Well, you think about a professional sports team being put on a budget like an allowance. If Liberty Media and goes and says they're going to buy the Braves, why wouldn't they say we're going to put whatever we need to put in to have a great program, great team? But then again, you can overpay players. Look what they did with Dansby Swanson. You made a great point. We're not going to pay this guy $177 million. He had a great contract with us, and we got probably the best of his career. Yeah. Not that he's not going to have a good career from here on. He's not very old, but I think they're smart to do that. I like what you just pointed out. They're going to buy up their free agency, lock them in early. That's a brilliant strategy. As former manager Bobby Cox would say, it's the Braves way.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. I mean, those guys are eligible for arbitration, a couple of years after they make it to the majors. And the team that brings them to the majors has them for 6 years. And during that time, they can go to arbitration if somebody really becomes an Acuna out of nowhere. And the Braves have basically just said, we're not going to do the arbitration thing, because you're basically arguing in front of a mediator why your player doesn't deserve, X amount of dollars. And that's never fun. That's like saying I want a raise, and they're like, no, you're not good enough, when you obviously are. You're an all-star at 21 years old. So the Braves have kind of turned the whole arbitration thing upside down and just said, we're going to take arbitration out of the way. We're just going to make you a free agent, prematurely, but we're not going to pay you open market free agent dollars. And a lot of the other teams are starting to pay attention to that and going, all right, well, this might be a way to do it, because the Phillies and the Mets and some of these teams that have, bigger checkbooks will just pay their way to the top. But those guys are 34 years old, 35 sometimes, and they're making $30 million a year. A lot of pitchers are. And, those guys aren't at the prime of their career in terms of injury at 35. Can they still do it? Scherzer's like almost 40. He can still throw 99 miles an hour, but he's old and he's susceptible to injury at this stage, versus a Max Fried that's 29, that the Braves are paying a fraction of that amount. Now, when Max Fried becomes a free agent, the Braves may have to let him walk, just like they did with Freeman and Swanson. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's ultimately what the structure of the team is. And I don't know if you remember the Liberty Media purchase of the Braves, but it was a non-cash stock swap that they did to not trigger a tax event. So when Time Warner, needed to offload the Braves, Liberty Media took Time Warner stock in trade for giving the Braves to Liberty Media. So it was a way to trade an asset that didn't trigger a tax event in terms of capital gains. So Liberty Media ends up with the Braves. On paper, maybe it says they're worth $300 million or something like that. But if somebody was going to sell the Braves today, it's more like a $2 billion franchise, from 10 years ago when that occurred. So, Liberty Media basically has a Major League Baseball team at a huge discount to the open market themselves. And they're starting to let them spend more money, but they're never going to give them a $400 million budget. That's not going to happen,
Yeah. Hey, I agree. You broke that down, because I was going to say the Braves probably a $2 billion franchise. Happy birthday, Waller May, Dr. Waller May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport. Many, many more to come. You're 59% of the way to your goal. Still practicing at 100. Hey, it can happen. Billy, that breakdown on the Braves is brilliant. And you look at, you've got to have, the Braves have been, John Schuerholz and what they did in the 80s. I remember, 41 years ago, 1982, weren't the Braves in the playoffs against the Dodgers?
Cardinals. No, it was the Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah, 82, yeah. Now, in 82, the Cardinals won the World Series. They've won 11 of them. And the Braves have 2 in Atlanta, but in terms of a model, consistently successful major league franchise, the Braves, I'd love to know since 1982 where the Braves rank in terms of division titles, pennants, world championships, National League champions, whatever. I would love to know what those numbers are. The Cardinals and the Braves, absolutely incredible.
Well, those are great teams. The way they run their franchises, works. they emphasize pitching and defense. The Braves, the Dodgers for decades have followed that model, pitching and defense. Because if you've got a pitching-oriented team, you got to have gloves behind them to protect the pitchers. You also have to have those outfield fences pretty far back so that some of those balls die on the warning track. And Turner Field was a cavern. It was a big, huge stadium.
Remember, we're down to the final minute of the show, but Atlanta Filthy County Stadium, they used to call it. That was look. I went to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium a few times.
Heck yeah.
That new location, and Billy, you're right. The Battery, it's there's nothing like it, and it's a gold mine of tax revenue there in Cobb County. But hey, man, great show today. Awesome insight from all of our guests. Just cannot get better than what we have here. 6 days a week, folks. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help people with the expectation of don't give to get, give to give, and find excuses to win. Again, happy birthday, Dr. Waller May. It is your day, everybody. All ye hail, Dr. Waller May. Billy Roberts, thanks so much for coming on with us as well. Sidelines be back with you tomorrow. Until then, have a great day, folks. We are out of here.